the time change mean for our health? Dr. Ann Romaker is the director of the Sleep Medicine Center at UC Medical Center, kind enough to spend some time with us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Romaker.
Good morning.
So how does daylight saving time affect our sleep?
Actually, it is quite disruptive to sleep. It's worse in the spring than in the fall, but there's evidence that as we make the changes, we increase healthcare utilization. There are more admissions, particularly for atrial fibrillation. There are more heart attacks. That's seen primarily in the spring. In the fall, there's a bigger problem with car accidents, et cetera, at night. So we know that as a species, we don't embrace this physically as well as we might emotionally.
Well, and a lot of people regularly don't get adequate sleep anyway, time change irregardless. How much sleep is recommended for adults, healthy adults?
Best health results are seen with about 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep a night. And when we go to the spring daylight savings time and we have light longer in the night, we don't get as much. And so our sleep deprivation gets worse on daylight savings time than on standard time.
Well, experts also point to the pandemic as being a cause for some poor sleep patterns. Are people stressed? Is that the reason?
People are not only stressed, they're not following their regular routines. And so they're not necessarily getting up at the same time or going to bed at the same time. And as the circadian rhythms kind of unravel, then sleep becomes kind of patchy. You get it in naps, around the clock instead of in one big chunk. And that doesn't do as much for your health and well-being, and you just don't feel as good.
Yeah, you mentioned heart problems when we spring forward in the spring, but if you're not getting adequate sleep on a regular basis, what happens to your body and your brain? What can happen?
Lots of things, but you're getting at a very important point. When you're chronically sleep deprived, you end up sort of running on adrenaline. You have to keep increasing the stress hormones to try to keep going, and so there's an increased risk of hypertension. There's actually even an increased risk of developing diabetes, heart disease, heart attacks, heart rhythm problems, and there are even cancers that are associated with people not getting enough sleep on a regular basis.
So what are some good sleep habits that we could form? You mentioned, you mentioned kind of being on a regular schedule, but what are some other good sleep habits?
The most important thing is to get up at the same time every day and to be exposed to morning sunlight. That sort of tells your brain when to go to sleep at night. And the second most important thing is exercise. Exercise definitely helps relieve tension. It helps relieve stress in the muscles as well as in the brain, and it relaxes blood vessels. You get better sleep and you have better health. And after that, not eating within 2 hours of bedtime and just giving yourself enough time to sleep. We need to value it. Avoid alcohol within about 4 hours of bedtime, because alcohol, although it makes you sleepy, it's metabolized in ways that cause light sleep and easy awakenings in the last half of the night. Avoid caffeine within about 8 hours. So a lot of this sounds easy, but it's lifestyle changes, and they're always hard to make, but they pay big dividends.
Yeah, and maybe if you just do one at a time is a good way to do it. Dr. Ann Romaker, thank you so much for your time. Great information today.
My pleasure.